I'm going to show you how I go about building high school dynasties in CFB 27. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go in and click on create and share here in the menu. So we're going to go to the download center. After you go to the download center, you're going to hit search, and we're going to basically hope that somebody's built a team that we're hoping to build. In this case, I'm in Indiana, so I'm going to be looking for Indiana teams. So like a school like that comes to mind is Hobart, like the Hobart Brickies. I simply don't have enough time to build out 16 whole team builder teams. So I'm just going to hope, like, let's say I wanted to play as Hobart, like say I went to Hobart High School. I didn't, but if I did go to Hobart High School, if I wanted to build a team builder dynasty with Hobart High School, I'm going to search it on here and hope that somebody built it. In this case, somebody did. A few people did, it looks like. And I'm just basically going to look through these and see which one resembles what I'm looking for. After I search it, I'm then going to click X on the one that I like. I'm going to hit preview. I'm not just going to download it. I want to see what I'm downloading first a little bit. So get a little bit of a preview. And what I'm looking at is the uniform, see if it's something that I can rock with. Maybe I look at the away, see if they have other options for whatever reason. Just to spice things up. I look at the field, see if I like the field, see if it's somewhere that I can see myself wanting to play at if I play against them at their stadium. I look at the capacity. Some of the people that build these teams for you will make the stadium capacity really large, which doesn't really reflect high school football. So I tend to look for a smaller size stadium when I'm looking for these. So 51,000 capacity is honestly a little bit large. But I've seen people build high school team builder teams on here with, close to 100,000 people in it. So I'm looking for smaller stadiums usually. And the last thing I look for is I look at the ratings of the team. So I'm like 87 overall. Like if I'm looking for high school teams that are all really good and solid, that's one thing. But if I'm doing a team builder dynasty where I want players to not be the best and kind of stick around a little bit, I usually try to look for a team builder team that has lower overall ratings. I'm just going to exit out and look at the second option here, preview. All right, so with this one, I see that I like the field a little bit better, honestly, than I like the last field. The ratings aren't as ridiculous as the last one. The capacity for the stadium is only 140, which to me reflects more of like the high schools that I played at anyways. Most of them weren't like holding 50,000 people. That's kind of crazy, honestly. So I hit triangle to download. All right, so this is EA Sports we're talking about here. So I had to go back and delete one of my previously downloaded teams to make room to download this team. So I'm going to push triangle and download. It's going to tell me download is complete. So now I currently only have 15 teams downloaded, but that's because EA Sports kind of lags a bit after you delete one of your teams. So like after you delete a few teams. So I deleted a few teams before making this video, and that kind of caused this error message telling me I had too many teams. But you're allowed to download up to 16 teams. After we download our 16 teams, we're going to go to start a dynasty. For Team Builder access, you have to play on the cloud, so you have to play online for Team Builder. So you got to make sure that this is set to on. Active roster doesn't really matter. We're going to continue. What we're going to do now is we're going to go down to import Team Builder. We're going to go through the list and replace any of the powerhouse programs. We can start with Ohio State. We'll click X on them. We'll just go ahead and put the Lowell Red Devils. They'll be the first team we select. Now it's going to give you this option here to whether you want to use your roster that's imported from the Team Builder website, or if you want to keep Ohio State's roster and just replace everything else. So it'll have your Team Builder stadium, it'll have your Team Builder uniforms, everything will be your Team Builder except for the team if you decide to keep the Ohio State roster in this case. So we're going to import the Team Builder roster. So Ohio State is now replaced with the Red Devils in this dynasty. And we're going to go ahead. I'm going to now replace Notre Dame. So now Notre Dame is replaced with the Maryville Pirates. So I'm going to go through and just replace a bunch of these top teams with that, and then we'll continue. And just like that, I've imported all of my team builder teams into my CFB Dynasty. And now I'll be able to move on to the next step, which is working to create like a full high school schedule. And the first thing we need to do with that is we need to divide these teams into conferences. It looks like Maryville is the imported team that's already in the independent conference, so we'll make that my team just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to divide up all of my team builder teams between the other conferences. So I'm going to go through and do that real quick. There's only 10 conferences, so if you're able to import 16 teams, you'll be able to put at least one team in all of the conferences while having your team be independent. So like I've went through and did that, made sure that there was at least one team in all the conferences, because basically what this is going to create is we're going to go through the schedule in the next step, and we're going to basically give all the high school teams are going to get automatic force wins against all college teams. When dividing up the teams between all the conferences and giving force wins to the high school teams against the college teams, there won't be many college teams that make it to the playoffs. All right, so we're going to select our team, the Maryville Pirates. Maryville is the team that's in the independent conference. All right, so we placed our team in the independent conference so that we can have the highest probability of being able to fill out our schedule with just high school teams. It looks like week 6, week 8, and week 9 are kind of locked in. I'm not sure if this is a Notre Dame thing or whatnot, but basically we're only able to schedule 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 high school teams. If my team wasn't in the independent conference and I was in a conference full of high school teams, I could more easily get a schedule full of high school teams. But then that would result in those high school teams beating each other up, basically. Since those teams will be beating each other up, more of those teams will be eliminated from the high school playoffs. To make sure that the playoffs is full of high school teams, we're going to go through here when the season starts, when we get to week 1, and we're going to give our team force wins against any college teams that are put on our schedule. So that includes the playoffs. So if we make it to the playoffs and for whatever reason a team slips through the cracks that isn't a high school team, that counts as a force win for our team. All right. So the high school teams basically only ever play actual high school teams. So only high school teams can beat high school teams in this dynasty. We're going to go over to the team schedule tab and we're going to click on that. We're going to make sure that all the high school teams get force wins. So I'm going to go through and give all of the high school teams a win, even myself. Even if I'm playing all the games this season, I don't play any of the college games. I just get a force win that week. So Stanford, force win, USC, force win, Navy, force win, and then I'll just play the rest of the games. So, but I'm going to go through all of my teams, and I'm going to basically do the same thing. Going through and giving all of our imported team builder teams force wins against college teams takes way less time than recruiting does while doing a regular college football dynasty. So this is light work. So I went through and I added force wins for all of our high school teams within this dynasty. And literally, I checked the time. It took me like 15 minutes to do it. Like literally. I didn't double check myself, so maybe I made an error somewhere, but it's not that big of a deal in the big scheme of things. The biggest thing is that my high school teams are most likely the ones that are going to make it to the playoffs. All right, so with the recruiting, there's 2 different approaches that I consider taking. The first one is basically you can recruit any players from your state, so that way it kind of feels like those players are coming from where you're from. Or you can do like within the area of your school, so like players that are within that city area. So you recruit those players first. Say you live in Gary, Indiana, your high school's in Gary, Indiana. You only recruit players that are from cities you've heard of in the top half of Indiana. And if they're not, then you don't get them. So like that might mean that some years you're only having a class of 9 players. That'll make those 9 players matter way more. You might have a class where you have 20 players, which is realistic. Sometimes you have bigger classes, sometimes you have smaller classes. Sometimes your classes are more talented, sometimes they're weaker. And so we want to make sure that we are maintaining that sense of I'm not just bringing in 5 stars every year and I'm not scouting all these players to get just the 99 speed players every year. And that brings me to another point. At no point am I scouting these players. I'm not scouting these players because I'm not being selective with which players I bring in. And I'll show you what I mean right now. So after I enter into recruiting, recruit players that are from my state. So you can separate your state here. You can just go to your state. In my case, I'm in Indiana. I would go to Indiana and I would literally, because I want to keep it random, I would just literally add top players that I can fill, the top that pop up first. So after I go to Indiana, I would literally just go down the line, add them. And again, after I fill my board, I'm not scouting these guys. I'm not scouting them. This is not the way that I do it because I feel like this makes it a little bit too easy to build your roster because you will land some 4 stars and some 3 stars this way, obviously, because Indiana has some talent also. I don't pay too much attention to the state that they're from. I prefer to go down to 2 stars and literally just go down the board and add the high school 2 stars until my board is full. So like I add them, I don't care what their position is because like I said, this is high school. I'm not able to say, go to the middle school and say, hey bro, I'm gonna need 5 more linemen next year. So I'm gonna need you to send me 5 guards, bro. Like that's not how it works. And since that's not how it works, that's not how I run my high school dynasties. I go down, like I said, I just add until my board is full. And I'm doing this. We're in week 1 right now. Or week 0. So now my board is full. I've added the 2-star players, only high school. You can see their class over here, like to the right. So like I only added the high school players. What I'm going to do now that I'm on my recruiting board is top to bottom, I'm going to give them max hours. All right. So I'm going to add 50 hours and I'm going to go down the board and add 50 hours. Recruiting for my high school dynasties is so much easier because I don't have to worry about hard sales. I don't have to worry about scheduling visits. I don't have to worry about complimentary visits. I don't have to worry about any of that. I don't have to worry about like team needs, as silly as that sounds. Because it's high school football, I have to work with whatever players I get. So that means if I get 5 kickers, I'm just going to have to change 4 players to different positions and hope that those other 4 kickers that don't get to play kicker, I'm going to have to hope that they can play more than just kicker. If I bring in 5 kickers because that's what the recruiting class holds for me, then I'm just going to have to make do with that. And so maybe one of those kickers, I start training them to be a quarterback because I see that my quarterback's a junior and this kicker maybe has a little bit of throw power or something like that. I get to be smart with how I position players and where I put these players and get to, really think on another level about roster building. So it's not just about recruiting top talent. So I went through and added 50 hours to the top 16 players because that's what I could afford at this school. That's what I would do. And like I said, independent of positions, just add 50 hours to all of them. And I'm not going to look at this again really until the middle of the year. Some of these players will commit to other schools. Some of them will commit to me. Either way, whatever happens, happens. What I'm going to do at the midpoint of the season is I'm going to go in here and reassess my hours, and I'll show you that in a moment. After I've added the 50 hours to all of the players on the recruiting board, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, just for demonstration purposes, we're going to be playing our games if we were doing this dynasty, but we're going to simulate to week 8. And what we're going to do with week 8 is we're going to go to recruiting and check on how we're doing. All right. So we might have some players committed by then. And if we have players committed, then that's going to free up hours. What we're then going to do is we're going to move those hours down to the next player on the board. Again, we're not picking and choosing which players really. We're not scouting players. That's not what we're doing. We're just adding hours to players that we already previously put on the board that fit the scope of what we're looking for. When we're building our recruiting board originally, we would make sure that it fits what we're looking for. So like if your high school is a school that's mostly filled with, I don't know, we'll say black players, white players, whatever it might be, you would make sure that the players that you're adding to your recruiting board kind of fit the demographic that you're trying to maintain at your school. Maybe you have a school that's like 50-50, then it doesn't really matter as much. Just kind of mix it in and do what you do. So you want to make sure that when you're building your recruiting board, you're doing all these things. So as we see here, we already have a player signed. We have a couple players signed. So that's going to free up hours. So we're going to go to the recruiting board. And what we're going to see is that we have a few players that have committed already. So we have to ask ourselves, how many players are we trying to get each year? Like, are you trying to stay at the bare minimum, and get the fewest players possible? Because if you're trying to get, if you're trying to get 10 players, then I would see here, I have 10 players already. All right, so I've signed 10 players. So if that was the case, if 10 players per year is what I'm aiming for, then I would just go through the recruiting board and kick off the rest of the players and be done with recruiting until next season, because I only need 10 players that are going to be coming into the school. All right, so if I'm looking for 15, then what I would do is I would go through my list, look for the next available player that I haven't offered anything to, and I would add 50 hours. So like I would just go down the list. Players that are available that don't have me locked out, add 50 hours. So I would do that until my hours are gone. And then as we make it through the weeks, I would look for the point at which I met my target for how many players I wanted to bring in each year. And once that happened, then I'm deleting everybody else off of my board because I'm only trying to bring in a certain number of players. I'm not trying to bring in 35 players every year because then I have to cut players. All right, so I went through and added 50 hours on the next available players. I aim for 10 players per year because that forces me into positions where I have to change a player to another position. I might end up a little bit short and have to have walk-ons, which that happens in high school football. In high school football, you get a player that hasn't played any sports until his junior year and he'll come in. And so if you end up short at a position and the computer generates a walk-on for you that's a sophomore, junior, senior, whatever, that's fine. That's realistic. That happens. So that's just how I do it, and I just progress through the season. So recruiting, literally, it takes me tops 20 minutes because I'm just adding 50s, moving on. I'm not scouting anything. I'm not looking at names, player build, or any of that. I'm just adding 50 hours. Within your high school team build a dynasty should take no time at all, basically. Your goal is to basically just make sure you have some freshmen coming in. You don't really, in real life, get to decide exactly what freshmen come in and how good they are, how fast they are, how strong they are, any of that stuff, what abilities they have. You don't get to determine all that. You just get to you get the players that come there. So what we're going to do is we're going to reflect that in our dynasty. We're just going to add players to the board, bring them in. Like I said, you can do 4 stars, 3 stars, whatever stars you want to do. That's fine, however you want to build your dynasty. I prefer to do 2 stars and manually progress them. They're 2 stars, so even with auto progression, they're not going to get too amazing. So like if you leave auto progression on for these 2-stars, they're not going to get amazing and like be getting drafted by sophomore year, junior year, anything like that because they're 2-stars. So this is why we want to make sure that we kind of lower the floor a little bit so that they have that runway on that room to grow. So I tend to stick with 2-stars and just bring in a bunch of random 2-stars, and those are my freshmen for my dynasty. These are my players that I'm bringing in. All right. With this, I treat my players, my recruiting class, I treat them as if they're 7th graders in a way. So when they get onto my team, my goal is to basically redshirt all of them. In order to redshirt, you just go over to team and you go down to redshirt. You click that. And so we're going to be using players that are currently on the roster. So like this player here, this Hurley person, he's a pretty good running back. So the players I recruit won't be this good, obviously, because they're 2-stars. But what I would do is I would then click redshirt. So every freshman that's on my roster, I would redshirt them and treat them almost like 8th graders. They don't get to play. Like I'm never playing my true freshmen because I'm seeing them as if they're in middle school. The head coach of Maryville can go to a middle school game to kind of peep the talent. They have the ability to reach out to the middle school coaches to ask them about like, hey, what are the linemen like? Is there anybody that you think could be good enough to maybe even, help us out freshman year? And so like with this method, you could like look through the roster and be like, okay, I know that I have a freshman center that'll be here next year, or I have an 8th grader that'll be a freshman next year on my offensive line or at quarterback or whatever position it is that I need. So that is good because maybe he'll be a guy for us. And then this also gives me 5 years really to get to know the players. I get to build a connection with the players for 5 years because, like I said, I'm treating him as if this player's an 8th grader. Then I get to get him for 4 years after that. So once he becomes a redshirt freshman, we'll treat him as basically he's a freshman in high school now. But basically, redshirt, if they're currently redshirted, I treat them as if they're 8th graders, so they're not allowed to play. But at the same time, they give me a foundation to know what players I have coming in for their freshman year next season. So that kind of helps me build out my dynasty a little bit and like even plan a little bit for the next year. All right. So if we adjust the settings and the sliders a little bit, we'll be able to really make this game play and make the whole world really feel like it's actually high school football. I play on Heisman. I do not feel like my skill level is honestly good enough to consistently win on Heisman. And I do that because my high school was not a high school that was winning state every year. So I want this to feel realistic. I want the other teams to feel like they're at times like very dominating. There were games where we lost very badly. And I'm like, I want to replicate that within this league. So I don't want to make every game too easy. I don't want my high school winning state every year. So I want this to be a challenge. A really good challenge because winning state every year is a real challenge. So I'm putting that thing on Heisman. I have my coaching slider set to career. So it's like hard to get coaching points doing this manual progression. Like if I'm using manual progression, then I would honestly probably change this to like 40 because I'm recruiting only 2-star players, but I also don't want those 2-star players to become absolute monsters all the time. If one of my 2-star players that I'm recruiting becomes very dominant, then I'm like, I want that to be the exception, not the rule, if that makes sense. The next one I want to make sure that we change, which is one of the most important ones, honestly, is I do not want 10 players transferring every season. I don't want 20 players transferring every season. It's supposed to be high school football. So obviously I need to set this to be 0 so that I don't have players transferring. Most I've done is maybe 1. So that I have a player transferring every season. Like usually there's at least one player that will be trying to transfer if you have this set to 1. And I think that's fine. And you might get a chance at convincing them. Either way, I don't have this at some high number because in high school, you don't have your whole offense transferring out as you see within Dynasty mode. So for the user skill accuracy, these are the sliders that I use, and 3 that are most important. My quarterback accuracy has to be terrible. High school quarterbacks are not Peyton Manning. They're just not. They're just not. So I need that set to a low amount. Sometimes I'll even play with this at 25 in some dynasties or 20. My wide receiver catching has to be bad. It has to be set to 30. My receivers have to drop passes because that happens in high school football. And then the last one, tackling. I need my tackling to be terrible. That happens sometimes in high school football, like where you get a player that's amazing at tackling, but for the most part, a lot of players struggle to develop that sound technique with tackling. So I need my tackling ratings to be kind of tough. I need tackling to be tough, especially when I'm going up against elite talent. The other team has a 95 overall running back. I want to be able to feel that with how much my defense struggles to wrap up. All right, so tackling has to be set down. And this is just a little bit about what I have the slider set to for the CPU because their quarterback's not going to be Peyton Manning either. Their tackling's not going to be amazing. It's a little bit better than mine at 30, but it's still going to be kind of bad. All right, so like all their sliders are a little bit down. And the last one is the kicking. The kicking set to low amounts. All right. And so field goals are going to be tough. I don't expect kickoffs to be going past the goalpost, stuff like that. So now that we've simulated to the high school football playoffs, I mean, it's looking like SMU and Texas Tech were two college teams that slipped into the playoffs. So we have 16 total teams. 14 of these teams are high school teams. So two college teams slipped into the college playoffs. But for the most part, it's majority high school football teams. And at the same time, like I didn't play our actual game. So my team, which was Maryville in this dynasty, didn't make it to the playoffs as an independent. So there's a chance that it would have been different because it would have kicked potentially one of these lower ranking teams out. If you look at SMU, they're number 12. They look like they were the last seed to make it into the bracket with a 10-3 record. If we're an independent and we're doing amazing, then maybe we take one of those bye weeks and then we push everybody down a little bit, or push some people down, and so then SMU does not make the cut for the playoffs. But you get the point. Like, for the most part, all these teams are high school teams except for those two. And when we get to the scheduling, we're going to go to basically just like we did during the regular season. Those high school teams are going to get force wins against those teams. So we're going to go to the scores and schedules. So those high school teams are going to get force wins. So we're going to force a Western Gary win against SMU. The other team that made it was Texas Tech. So we're going to go find Texas Tech, and we're going to give a force win to Gavitt, and we're going to give a force win to Western Gary against SMU. That makes sure that basically only high school teams get wins in this dynasty, because like we said, if they go up against a college team at any point, automatic force win. And so we can simulate to the national title game. All right, so looking at the updated bracket now that we've simmed all the way to the title game, we see if we look at the SMU game, we see because we forced a win 5 against 12. Western Gary got a forced win against SMU, so they're going to go advance on to the playoffs. After week 1 in the playoffs, all the teams are high school teams, which is what we wanted. That's pretty much how we get our high school dynasty to feel like an actual high school dynasty. Pretty much anytime a high school team goes up against a college team at any point, automatic first win. You don't play the games. It doesn't happen. Basically, they automatically get forced wins. Those teams, to us, they don't exist. We want a high school dynasty, and this is the best way to do it currently until they expand the amount of teams you're allowed to import into dynasty. And that's another point that I have to add. So Maryville, because I did not give myself a good playing season because I didn't play the games, like I didn't have a good record, Maryville didn't make it to the playoffs. So like I said, they would have potentially knocked one of the college teams out of the playoffs. But at the same time, EA Sports or the Team Builder website was being kind of weird and not letting me upload my 16th team. So this dynasty build only has 15 high school Team Builder teams in it. So that's going to like increase the probability of a college team slipping into the playoffs because I have less high school teams in it. In my other high school Team Builder dynasty, I like have maybe like one college team that slips in like every other year or so based off how I have it set up. So basically you want to put as many high school teams in as possible. They get force wins against college teams, and they make recruiting kind of randomized to get that high school filled in terms of like players coming in and like not being able to choose to just bring in top talent all the time. Make sure you boys like, comment, subscribe, all of that normal YouTube channel stuff, and we'll see what ideas we can come up with next. If you have any ways for me to improve this, please let me know, because I'm like always trying to find a way to make a better high school dynasty within this game.